Hi guys, thanks for checking out Records in My Life. We're here with Greg from Cigarettes After Sex. How are you, Greg?
Doing good. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks. Tell us what's going on with you in the band.
So this is our first show in Vancouver tonight, which is great. We're doing pretty much like a West Coast down to Texas tour of the U.S. and including some dates in Canada like Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver. And then after that, doing more of the U.S., doing the East Coast and stuff like that. So this is our first kind of full-fledged tour of North America and Canada.
And how, excuse me, how are things going with the new album that came out recently?
It's going really good. Yeah, everything, it seems like it kind of did exactly what it needed to do, and everything's been elevated. Everything's been getting better, better shows, more notice, everything's just kind of increasing, And
you're happy with the way the songs are coming out live? Because the sound is a bit textured,
right.
So is it...
Yeah, no, it's great. The thing with us, too, is like it was so easy, and actually I think fans are a bit jarred by this when they see us, but it's pretty much going to sound exactly like the record, because we record live in like, basically coming from like a 50s style, where, you got like a group, we were just talking about Buddy Holly before this interview, like a group like the Crickets that just got together and just played in the same room, or like, Elvis on Sun Records, or that kind of music. Going back to that, so it's just, what you hear on the record is just us playing in a room together, totally live, not really, some slight kind of overdubs of like acoustic guitars. Everything else is essentially there, so I think it's a bit jarring when fans hear us like, oh, it sounds exactly like the record.
But that's great, though. That's what people love. They want to hear...
For sure.
It's a tricky thing.
I think it's cool, too.
So let's talk a bit about your influence. You obviously like a lot of ambient music. Is there a record that stands out for you?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot that got me into ambient music, like Music for Airports by Brian Eno was a big one. But the one that I keep coming back to, oddly now, that I think is really amazing is Steve Roach. His first record is called Reflections in Suspension. So that first Steve Roach record is just phenomenal. I don't know what it is about it, but it's very otherworldly, and it kind of does everything I'd want an ambient record to do. And it's not quite as well known. Brian Eno's works are a lot more, kind of talked about. But Steve Roach, I guess because Steve Roach got a little more eclectic, he became kind of a new age artist later. But if you find that first record, Reflections in Suspension, it's just, I think it's like the best ambient record that I've heard.
Sweet. And you are, from what I've read, I hope I did my research work. Yeah. You're a big fan of Miles Davis. Which album do you... he's got so many good ones, but which one would you...
Never sure. Yeah, Miles Davis, I kind of every time I think of... I kind of narrowed down the 4 heroes I would have, and Miles Davis is always in that top 4. And just because of the way that he approached, improvisation as a band leader, he was great at assembling, amazing players together and using their strengths to create amazing music. I have to say the obvious choice is Kind of Blue, because Kind of Blue was really influential on Cigarette Sound too. And it's a record that I started listening to in high school, and it's really never left my side. It's just a perfect record. There's really nothing wrong with it at all, and there's nothing that sounds like it still. I know it's basically his most popular record. Lately, though, actually, I've been listening to, what is that record, Nefertiti. It's a great record, too, though. So that's more of his kind of a little more frantic, a little more not as serene kind of music. But yeah, he's astounding. He's great.
And there's a lot more, of that genre loosely being made today, right? Because that's bedroom. It's not to say it's all made in the bedroom, obviously, because Brian Eno was probably working in a big room when he first started recording, I would guess.
Yeah, maybe, probably.
but there is some good stuff. Is there any other newer artists that you
Newer ambient artists? Yeah, there is actually. There's a really great guy. He made a great record called Luxury Problems, Andy Stott.
Right.
And it's, it's kind of leaning towards dance music a bit. It's in that ambient range. But just his work with texture, it's really kind of dark and brooding, but keeps a very kind of surreal quality. But Luxury Problems by Andy Stott, I think, is kind of a newer ambient record that I would stand by. Or there's Disintegration Loops by William Basinski. It's pretty good. It came out about 10 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, Andy Stott was just referenced. I will have to check that one.
That's
why the show, it's an educational show. We get the scoop on great albums from, talented musicians that are in the know.
That's nice.
Let's talk about Texas just for a tiny bit, the musical history. It's really interesting. We were talking about it before the interview as well.
Yeah.
We have we're talking Buddy Holly, and I think Roy Orbison was from there to Roky Erickson, Butthole Surfers, Ministry. There's just so many. What kind of bands were you listening, or what albums were
from El Paso? Yeah, and I think El Paso, growing up, the bands I knew about that were, I mean, I grew up in the scene where At the Drive-In had just taken off, and that was a band that was around that a lot of friends I knew were really into. So that was a big, okay, this band's from El Paso, and they really made it, like in the more modern terms. But then, once I started digging more into Texas and things like that, there was, Bobby Fuller, which I love. I Fought the Law probably has one of my favorite guitar solos in it, and he's a great singer. Also, too, I was looking at Roky Erickson. Obviously, we covered Starry Eyes by Roky Erickson, kind of the Austin scene. I got a chance to see him, too, maybe like 5 years ago at ACL, and that was great. I'm a big fan of him, and 13th Floor Elevators and all that stuff is great. So there's so many. I was saying, too, Ornette Coleman is from Texas, which I love his record. What is it? The Shape of Jazz to Come. Right. It's really good. Yeah, so there's some interesting artists that have come from Texas. It's pretty, it's pretty strange how that worked out.
I know there's something in the water because like Ornette Coleman's kind of considered avant-garde in the avant-garde jazz world, obviously, and
totally.
You go from him and you associate Texas with country and maybe a bit of Tejano. Did I pronounce that right? Excuse me.
Yeah, Tejano. Yeah, you kind of get like Selena. Like I grew up like Selena and like Tejano coming from Texas, basically, or like Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of blues. So those were the kind of two camps like you're hearing. Growing up thinking, okay, this is the music from Texas, it's Tejano, or it's kind of blues and stuff like that. But later you find out there's some very avant-garde artists that came from Texas. Yeah.
What's a good record? My friend's about to have a kid, so I want to buy him. I want to buy him his first album. Which record should I buy him?
The first record that someone should hear is Coming Into the World. Let's see, like for the kid, like buying a record for his son or for his kid to come. It's a great question. I'd have to say like something with like a classical collection, definitely. I think that's like the best kind of thing. So if you bought him like maybe like a collection of like Chopin's Nocturnes or something, that might kind of warp him though. Yeah, but I think kind of getting into classical at an early age. Classical is just I think the kind of music in my mind that is the most powerful when it really comes down to it. And I think me listening to like Mozart and Beethoven and stuff like that at an early age really kind of helped me have an open mind about music in general.
Did you take piano lessons as a...
No, I tried to take guitar lessons, and I took it for a little while, but I'm like such a bad student where they would tell me to do something, and I'd go home, and I'd be like, no, I'm just going to play whatever I want to play, and I would never kind of learn the songs they would tell me to learn, and I'd say, well, I'm just going to learn the songs I want to learn. So I was a terrible student. I couldn't do lessons.
Makes a lot of sense, I mean, right?
Yeah. No, it's fine. I mean, it worked out fine for me, I think. But some people really flourish in that context. But me, I was like, I just gotta do my own thing. Yeah.
Let's do one more record. I really appreciate your time again. And let's do like an underrated album, like deep, not something. Some people say like deep tracks, but like I don't know.
Yeah, like a deep record. Yeah, let's see. I think the one that I've been talking about lately, the record I became obsessed with. Is this record by Nelson Riddle that was Frank Sinatra's arranger. I think he did some work with like Johnny Mathis. He was kind of in that era of these really lush kind of string arrangements. He has this amazing record called Sea of Dreams, which is just instrumental. His arrangement's just kind of instrumental the whole time, and it has that kind of effect that kind of blue has, where you just kind of float in a cloud the whole time, and there's no like edges to it. You just kind of get into this really like heavenly kind of vibe. And that record is one of few that does that. I think a lot of other albums kind of they get a little too dark, or they kind of get strange, or they all of a sudden, like a record like OK Computer is great, and then all of a sudden in the middle is like electioneering, and it kind of like, all right, it kind of jars you out of the like this kind of vibe you're in. But that record, Sea of Dreams, is really, it's like kind of hard to find, and I think that's the one that I kind of think about lately. That's really extremely underrated. Yeah.
Excellent. Great picks.
Thanks.
There's definitely a couple I'll have to look into.
Nice, thank you.
And thanks so much for being on the show. And
sure, yeah.
We like to ask sometimes, do you have any words of wisdom or advice for the World Wide Webs?
World Web, it's the most cliched thing to say ever, but you have to stay true to whatever you want to do and not let anybody dissuade you by their negative comments or something like that. So I think you just gotta have faith in yourself that it's the best thing for you. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you again.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.